Hello, I'm Nick. Welcome to Let's Go Dad. Today we're going to talk about EMDR, Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing. This has become really popular in counseling circles around foster care, adoption, and trauma. Let's talk about what it is, if it worked for our family, and why you should consider it. Thanks for watching.
2, 3.
Let's go. Okay, EMDR, Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing. What is it? So let's say you've experienced trauma, especially as a young child, where you can't really understand what's going on, but even beyond that, and it's just too much for you to process. Like you can't take it all in. It's too much emotion, too much feeling. Everything going on just has this huge impact on you in a way that your brain is just going, ah, and you can't process it. You can't store it in the way that it should be stored as a memory. What's going to end up happening is every time something points to that memory, every time you think of something that brings you back to that memory, every time there's a taste or a smell or someone says a phrase or a word or you see an image or watch a show where there's something that directs you or directs your mind in the direction of that memory, you're going to be super sensitive to it, and you're going to have that trauma experience almost over again. You're going to get overstimulated. You're going to burst. Like you're going to maybe have bad behaviors. You're going to freak out. You might cry. You might have just this intense reaction to something that wouldn't normally be an intense thing. Like maybe you see someone rolling a truck across the floor, and that reminds you of something that happened that was traumatic for you. This happens. I can tell you, if you've done foster care, you know that there are triggers like this that happen on a regular basis to our kids, that they're experiencing these traumas again and again and again and again because they're accessing these memories, they're triggering these memories that are just too much for them to handle. So what can you do? Well, that's where, in theory, EMDR comes in. EMDR is something I hear a lot about in foster care circles and adoption circles. Lots of people have questions. Not a lot of people have answers right now about this or its efficacy. So let's talk about how it's worked in my family. But first, keep in mind that I am not a professional. I am not a counselor. I am not someone who's trained in EMDR in any way, shape, or form. We're just a family that's gone through this experience and where we've had a specialist, someone who's been trained as a counselor with EMDR, as a therapist with EMDR, who's been trained to utilize this as a way of helping children deal with their trauma. That's who we are. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, as I am not a professional with EMDR in any way, shape, or form. However, I think you'll still get something out of this video. So Robert's counselor comes up to us and says, hey, I think this might be a good thing for you. I was just trained in this. I've got a little bit of experience now with EMDR, and I think it'll be good for Robert. Can we give it a shot? I hadn't heard of it, but then I went home and asked about it. And apparently one of our friends who's a counselor utilizes this method as well and has seen great success with adults over the past. I thought it was a new thing. Apparently it's been around since the 80s, but it hasn't been utilized as much, and now it's becoming this great talked about thing in foster care and adoption circles. He explained to me a little bit of what it did, how it helped children who've had these traumatic experiences but can't store the information correctly, whether they didn't have words to put them in or whatever, how it's helped them process or reprocess these memories of things that happened, these events in their brain. Now, he said the cool thing is it even helps children who really, or potentially could help children who really didn't understand what was happening at the time, who don't really have a memory of what happened or a good memory of what happened to them. It even works for those kids as well. So it's this chance at healing for even things that those kids haven't remembered but still somehow affects them. Because that's something that happens. Right, foster parents? You know what I'm talking about. They don't have a memory of it, but somehow they're triggered by these things, and they don't understand it. You don't understand it. It's really hard for a counselor to get at it because they just don't know what it is that's impacting them this way. So we came in. The counselor asked me to be there for half of the first session of EMDR. What he had Robert do is he asked him to think of something from his past. This first time, it didn't even have to be a traumatic memory at all. Just think of something from your past. We're going to have you give me a word or phrase that represents that so that we can refer to this in the future as we go back. And then I want you to draw a picture of that thing. And it doesn't have to be something that anyone else will understand. It just needs to be a picture so that you'll understand what happened. And Robert drew this big blob of red color. And somehow that represented something to him. Beautiful. Well then, and forgive me, my memory's a little shaky, but he pulls out these two buzzers that Robert holds in his hands. Even though it's called EMDR and it's an eye movement thing, the eye movement part wasn't what we used. We used the little buzzers instead of the eye movement thing, and well, I'll let you know how that worked for us. By the way, if you ever wonder why there's a bunch of bumps in my videos, often it's because I'm cutting out the word Someday I should just do like this large compile video of like 10,000 ums that I have from all of my videos. Just me, yeah. But it's a cuss word in Turkish, I guess, so I probably maybe shouldn't do that, as I'll offend the entire country of Turkey. Well, anyhow, he used these buzzers as a way of helping process those memories as he worked Robert through this session. And I was skeptical. I walked out of there at about that point going, man, I had hoped this was a new cool thing, but this is not going to do anything. This is ridiculous, right? Like, I walked out very skeptical. And I actually thought, this is going to waste 3 months of our time. Or this is going to waste a lot of our time in counseling. Bummer. Well, we do this for 3 months, and then Robert didn't really want to do it anymore, and that's fine. But I'll tell you something, even though he was like, I'm done with this, I want to do something else, I'd rather just talk things through and work things through. But here's what I noticed. So I noticed that Robert started being more able to talk about his past. Not even necessarily traumatic things from his past, although honestly he started talking about those too, but he started being willing to talk more about his past and his feelings about his past and his biological family. And he did this without as much difficulty as he had done this before. Honestly, that was about 3 months of EMDR, and he got to that point as they processed one memory after another after another. He was able to talk about his past in much more open ways than he had been before. He was able to talk about his biological family, and not even just things that happened that were traumatic, although he talked more about those too, but he was much more open about his past than he had been before. This was huge. And do I think EMDR was a big part of that? I do. I'm actually a proponent now of EMDR for some kids. Let me state this though. Kids have to be willing to participate for this to work. They have to be willing to be open and honest with themselves and with their counselor. If they're not, this is not going to work, because there has to be that sense of, we're really going through this, we're really dealing with these emotions. And a lot of kids aren't there. They just aren't. And I can see, even though they say this can work with younger kids, I can see how younger kids wouldn't want to keep doing this. Yeah, they'd get tired of it. They'd want to go back to doing like sandbox therapy with toys, which is much more fun for a 4-year-old, for a 5-year-old, right? Like, I want to go back to doing sandbox therapy. Man, maybe I should buy a sandbox. So will this work for every child? Absolutely not. It will not. I hear it's great for adults as well. Will it work for every adult? It depends on the adult, how honest they can be with themselves about their past and about their trauma. That's my unprofessional opinion. Is it worth trying? Yeah, I think so. And just based on our experience, we're just one family, but based on our experience, I really think it's worth giving EMDR a chance. Because if this is able to take these memories, these parts of a child's past that are traumatic, that are causing them pain, and that they can't deal with in a healthy way, if it's able to take those things from their past and reprocess them so that they're able to deal with this stuff in a healthy way, that's huge. That is so huge. And the younger kids can start, the better, because once children get to a certain age, they start to think of those behaviors as being who they are. It becomes a part of them. And not only they do, but their peers do too, and it's really hard to break out of that once you get to upper elementary school, middle school, high school. Like, once you're labeled, it's hard for people to accept you as something else. I hope this has been helpful. Let me also say before we close this video that we hit 50,000 views this week. Yay! So thank you so much, folks, for that. Really appreciate all of your support, all of your comments, all of your likes and subscriptions. Really appreciate that. We hope that every one of those views, or as many of those views as possible, are inspirational to you, are helpful to you, are things that encourage you along your journey and inspire you to make the world a better place. We also are extremely close to hitting 4,000 hours of watch time, which if you're a YouTuber, you know what that means. 4,000 hours of watch time. We'll probably hit that today or tomorrow. Thumbs up. Thank you very much for being part of those hours. And I really, truly hope that every one of you is getting something out of this, so that when you watch these videos, that each one of our videos has a nugget or something in it for you that is a blessing to your family, that helps inspire and build you up. I really hope that's happening. Now, let's go, Dad.